Hello? Sorry. Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon. After that beautiful performance, I'm going to be talking about some heavy topics. So, sorry to do that. But I just wanted to say that some of the content that I'll be talking about can be quite confronting and graphic, potentially for some. And so if it does become too much at any point, please feel free to step out. I won't be offended. But I try not to shy away from the difficult parts of this topic because you can't really escape it. And it is something that is an urgent, prolific problem. So today I want to talk about deepfake abuse and the global fight for justice. I want to do a couple of things in this talk. The first, I want to share a bit about my story and my personal experiences. I then want to talk about the sheer scale, the global scale of this problem, its implications, and how we might tackle it. And finally, as this is a travel conference with many fellow travel lovers, I wanted to share a few insights about what travel has meant for me, navigating the appropriation of my whole identity, and what it's meant for me. So my journey began through a simple Google search many, many years ago, 18 years old. I'm 30 now, so 18 years old I decided to just Google myself one day, like we all do. And I didn't think that I would see anything, I didn't think I would find anything, but my whole life changed when I used this image of me. I was 17 in this image. And I Googled myself. And within an instant, my whole life shattered. I saw and discovered dozens upon dozens of pornographic websites that had images of me that had been taken from social media and posted on these sites. And on these websites, there were entire threads dedicated to me, and they not only had taken images of me from social media, but they had doctored or edited them into fake intimate content, fake intimate images, and had been posting that online. And alongside these fake images was horrific commentary about me, the way I looked, information about where I lived in terms of the city, where I studied. And it was shocking to see because I was not a celebrity, I'm not a celebrity, I was just an ordinary university student at the time, and I discovered that. And what do you do when you find something like that out? So I went to the police, as we all might do, and I was effectively told that there was nothing that they could do because at the time there weren't any specific laws that dealt with this issue. And it wasn't something that we hear about today as we did back then. We didn't talk about this issue back then. I don't think people even knew about it. And the term that we use, deepfakes, wasn't even coined back then. Image-based abuse wasn't coined back then. So I was effectively told, go and contact the websites myself to remove the material. So that's what I did. I would have to send these emails to these webmasters, these websites, and say, I didn't consent to have my images depicted in that way. Please remove it. And of course, we know what it's like when things are online. It's very hard to remove content. And there were times where the perpetrators wouldn't respond to me. There were times where they did, but then the images would pop up again if I got them taken down. There was one time where a perpetrator responded that they would only remove the material if I sent them nude photos of myself within 24 hours. So yes, as you can imagine, I was in a bind. But I learnt very quickly that the fight to take these images down wasn't going to be enough. I was in over my head. It was a never-ending battle. So I decided to speak out publicly, and I spoke out on national television in Australia. And as you can imagine, I didn't actually imagine, but my story went all over the world, and I wasn't expecting this. But I think what really struck a chord was that this issue was happening behind the scenes. It was happening to everyday women, but for the first time in a while, an everyday woman put a face to the issue. And so my story went around the world. But as you can imagine, with the internet, I was completely ripped apart and ripped to shreds. All types of comments about the way I looked. You're at fault for what happened to you. You're a slut. You're a whore. Everything that you can imagine that was horrific, I copped. But I realised that there had to be more that needed to be done. And so that led me down a path of trying to fight for justice. And so I helped petition the Australian government to criminalise this abuse. I, of course, can't take credit for the law reform, but I definitely played one small part. And I was involved in law reform in Australia. And so we had finally seen some sort of light on the horizon. But, of course, perpetrators don't stop there. They didn't stop there for me. And they continued to target me, even though I had been fighting for justice, and even though in the state and jurisdictions I was in, they had criminalised this abuse. Soon after my law reform efforts, I was targeted by videos. So they had escalated from images to videos, and the videos then were what we now refer to as deepfake videos. So essentially the use of artificial intelligence to create hyper-realistic videos or audio or images of someone doing something or saying something that they didn't do. And for an example, you can see in this next video of Barack Obama, hopefully that works. You can see that this is a video of him, but it's not actually him speaking. So you can see the hyper-realism behind the ability to appropriate someone's image, likeness, voice, and identity. But that drove me down another path, and the other path was my research into this issue. And so not only are we dealing with the potential for people to appropriate someone's images, like the video above, but we're also facing threats where Meta, Facebook, formerly Facebook, is now replicating human beings in virtual form in 3 dimensions. This is the subject of part of my research that I'm doing at the UWA Law School. So if you can imagine the implications of 2-dimensional appropriations of identity, in the future, we could have 3-dimensional avatars of ourselves that we have to deal with in, virtual reality or augmented reality. So, in terms of the scale of the problem, since 2017, the 40 biggest deepfake abuse sites have amassed billions of views. Women are disproportionately affected by this issue. We now have the rise and the popularisation of generative artificial intelligence, which means that people can create fake, deepfake images and videos of someone through a simple text prompt. You might have heard about the news of Taylor Swift having deepfakes created of her, but it's not just celebrity women, it's everyday women too. And in terms of everyday women, Nudify apps are a particular site where everyday women are targeted. So we have these Nudify apps that have emerged that allow people to upload an image of of a woman, of a clothed woman, and it will churn out nude images of that woman based on that clothed image without consent. And as you can see, within 21 days of the launch of one Nudify app, it processed 600,000 photos of everyday women. And then you also have the rise of Dignify technologies that essentially take images of women and put them in more modest clothing or in a more dignified position. But it's like a catch-22 for women. You're either hypersexualized or you're altered in some way by these men that are doing this, that think that it's okay to just adjust how women look and how women act. But it's not just these technologies that are behind this problem. You've also got economies that are dealing with this issue. So you've got global, organised, fully fledged economies that are using the same tactics as e-commerce businesses to essentially fuel this economy. People are trading in this material, and Visa and MasterCard are used as payment processors for the trading of this material too. You've also got Google that has been found to direct traffic to these sites. So when you Google deepfake porn today, the world's biggest deepfake abuse site is the first search result on Google. And so you have these big tech companies that are part of the pipeline facilitating this problem. And of course, you have these social media sites that claim to ban this, but they're also being used to promote and advertise this abuse. So what are the implications of this for society, for individuals, for everyday women? Unlike localized physical harms, like physical assaults and sexual assaults that might happen, and I'm never going to compare, but I think what makes this issue unique is that it is discoverable, it's inescapable, and it's potentially permanent and visible for all to see. It constitutes the mass-scale degradation and commodification of women and girls. It essentially is a tax or a price that we are now having to pay for existing or for just having a social media. It's a deprivation of our dignity, of our agency, our autonomy, and our capacity to self-determine. And beyond the emotional harms, it can impact a person's employability, their ability to earn in life, their reputation, their interpersonal relationships, and their romantic relationships. But not all hope is lost. We do have the capacity to regulate this issue. That's a whole another discussion, but we are seeing, and it's hopeful and it's a good thing, that we're starting to see countries around the world and governments around the world trying to tackle this issue. So we have criminal laws that are being introduced. We have laws that go after the creation, that go after the distribution, that go after the recording, or even potentially accessing them. So all those billions of people that are actually looking at the sites, that should potentially be criminalised. And you have a bunch of other regulatory responses. In Australia, we have criminal laws and we have civil laws, but Australia is limited in what it can do, and we're eventually going to have a global response to this. So I'm not too familiar with Malaysia's justice system, but I would hope that it does look into to tackling this issue if it hasn't already. I think I've sped up my time, but I just want to finish off by talking about something a bit more personal. So we've talked about the substantive elements of this issue and what can be done. I think there is hope. But coming back to a forum of travellers and coming from the perspective of someone who's had my whole life appropriated and taken in terms of my identity and my likeness, And as someone who's travelled to, I think 32 countries is my last tally, I was thinking about what travel meant for me, navigating a journey of life where I had a lot taken from me. And I think the main reflections I have is that as someone who's had this experience, travel has allowed me the ability to live life and be anonymous in places where people don't know who I am, and I don't have this cloud lingering over me. It gave me the opportunity to feel liberated, to feel alive through all the pain that I was going through. But I think deeper than that, something that travel and my experiences as a solo traveller allowed me was to help me gain the confidence to stand alone, to be comforted by my own solitude, because I think this fight has required me to stand alone sometimes, to stand up and say, this is wrong, even though I'm facing criticism and backlash and further abuse, even though people don't take this issue seriously. I had to find it within myself to really get to know my own values and convictions, and to be willing to stand alone when the need arose. And I think that's something that's really powerful about travel and solo travel in particular, because I'm sure that it's an experience that we'll all go through in this life, where we have to be able to stand alone sometimes, even if it means that we might be criticised or attacked. But I think that travel has helped me gain the confidence to do that, and I think that's really beautiful, and that's something that I was reflecting on as I was preparing for this. So from one fellow traveller to another, keep being courageous in your life. I believe it will pay off in one way or another. Thank you.